Ken said, I have a habit of bringing stories back from the North Pole. You might notice that I have that kind of look about me, and I do work with St. Nicholas, and part of my job working with St. Nicholas is I get to go up to the North Pole every now and then, and I get to visit with the men in the reindeer barn. And that's sort of like today, you go to some hardware stores and you sit down and listen, and men are just swapping stories all over the place. But this is where I get a lot of stories from the North Pole, and I bring them back. And even though we don't have any kids in the audience tonight, this story this year's North Pole story will help you who are grandparents or parents. Because as I have talked with kids over the years, they are forever asking me questions about the elves. And so I'm going to tell you about the elves, where they came from, and in particular, one very special elf. You see, long before Santa ever came to the North Pole, there were two other groups of travelers that came in. Wanderers, if you will. The first one were Vikings. Great big men and women came in ships. They were looking for peace, where they could settle down and relax, unlike their warring brethren. And then the Sami reindeer for herders. Now, to say you herd reindeer is a misnomer, but they are called Sami reindeer herders. You don't herd reindeer, you follow them. And so the Sami followed the reindeer right across the frozen Arctic Ocean to this place where they formed a village with the Vikings. They got along great. And they built a beautiful village called the North Pole. After many generations, the Vikings weren't so tall. They shrank down quite a bit. I mean, they started up way up here, and they got quite a bit shorter. And the Sami, when they came in, they were 5 feet tall to begin with, but they also shrank. See, the North Pole generally only supports people that are about 4 feet tall. And they got up, every now and then, by the way, there is a tall elf born, obviously of Viking descent. But then, about the year 945, Nicholas and Natasha, his wife, arrived. And through the help of these villagers at the North Pole, they began delivering presents around the world around the year 1210. Then, in the year 1866, a cartoonist by the name of Thomas Nast drew political cartoons during the Civil War, drew a beautiful cartoon called The Jolly Old Elf. It was Santa Claus delivering presents. Now, Nicholas was not very happy with this cartoon. He did not think himself as an elf. But everybody else at North Pole thought it was wonderful. They loved the label of being called an elf. And ever since then, they've done everything they can to encourage the rest of the world to call them elves. They think it's beautiful. By the way, they still have that picture that Thomas Nast did on the wall in the reindeer barn. It's behind safety glass. Because every time Santa sees it, he gets a little irate. He is not an elf. He stands about 8 tall, by the way. He's not an elf. But there have been other fairy folk, elves, that have come to the North Pole. About 1902, Santa heard about these fairies down in South America that were in dire straits. Bad weather had torn their environment up, and so he went down with the big sleigh and rescued these very unusual fairies. They're called twinkle-toes fairies. And I'll let you use your imagination to understand why. We have a reindeer story about them too. But anyway, the twinkle-toes fairies. And his chief reindeer herder went with him, and together they fashioned this beautiful basket on the back of the sleigh, got all the fairies in there, and took them up to the North Pole, where to this very day they help add magic to the presents of the Christmas presents at the North Pole. Not long after that, they got word about a colony of elves in Siberia during one of the many Russian revolutions. And, is that sad? Russian revolutions? Okay. Anyway, Santa went up, picked up, it took him a while, but he collected all of these elves that were in Siberia and took them to northern Greenland, where there was another colony. The trouble is that the elves in northern Greenland were tall and slender. The elves from Siberia were for short and round. But they do get along wonderfully and frequently lend their talents and gifts to the people at the North Pole, just across the waterway. Then, during the Second World War, another problem cropped up in Norway. It seems you had the Germans and the Americans were all fighting up there, and they were taking trolls captive. It wasn't that the trolls were on either side, it's just that neither army knew who these gentle folk were. They just knew they weren't there, so they must belong to the other guys. When word reached the North Pole, it took Santa and his crew, all 3 slaves running almost nonstop, a week to get all of the trolls back to the North Pole. And within a month, there was another problem started. See, trolls have this little habit. It's kind of an oddity in their personality. When they say hello, it can take anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour just to say hello. They will tell you everything about their family, update every single member of their family so you understand how they're doing. And then they will wait patiently and quietly until you do the same. And frequently, if you're an elf, they will not start talking until you give them an oatmeal cookie or a piece of oatmeal cake. Trolls love oatmeal. And if they happen to get hungry while they're telling you about their family, they will stop talking and sit and wait silently until you produce more oatmeal. Well, the trolls got really exhausted by the lifestyle of the elves, which we would consider extremely relaxed. And so the trolls moved out. They established another village just outside the confines of the North Pole, the village of the North Pole. Now, possibly the most famous elf in modern times came to the North Pole very recently. You see, there was a young girl by the name of Kathy who was playing around this park near her home and found a hole in this mountain, Kennesaw Mountain, Georgia. And Kathy poked her head in the hole, but she didn't go in. She went home and told her dad about it. And her dad came back with her, and together they explored the cave behind this hole in Kennesaw Mountain. And what they found was absolutely incredible. They found a very healthy colony of sprites. Kennemet sprites, to be exact. Now, Kennemets are very unusual in that they love to interact with people. Kennemets will watch out over children playing at Kennesaw Park or in the surrounding communities. And as soon as a child starts to get in trouble, the Kennemet will race to the parent and inspire the thought that the kid needs help. Realizing that something's wrong, the parent will get up and go see and take care of the problem. Kennemets are also known for slipping into dolls in people's houses. They'll slip into a doll and they'll watch over the household from inside the doll, making sure that everything goes as it should. Well, Kathy kept visiting with her Kennemet sprites all the way through high school, and then she went to college. And as happens frequently, she forgot about her dear friends in Kennesaw. Until she was back visiting the park one day with her husband and 2 8-year-old twin daughters, Susan and Sharon. All of a sudden, she remembered the cave. And she grabbed Susan and Sharon by their hands and went racing off to the base of the mountain and up the side to see if the cave was still there. And was horrified. Local teenagers had found the cave, had made the little hole much bigger, and had gone in and spray painted graffiti all over inside the cave. Without knowing it, they had destroyed the home of the Kennemet sprites. Scared of what they may find, the 2 girls and their mother started walking into the cave very slowly. And one of the sprites that was still there recognized Kathy, got her attention, and immediately took her to the very back, far reaches of the cave, where a portion of the Kennemet colony still survived. Not one of these 3 young ladies knew exactly what to do, so there in that messed up cave, they took each other's hands and they said a prayer for help to save these Kenneman sprites. The next day, Sunday, they were eating lunch, and there came a knock at the door. Sharon went over to the door and opened it, and there was a man stood there who was very, very familiar. He stood about yay tall, about a little over 6 feet tall, very robust man, had a beautiful, fluffy white beard, was wearing coveralls, a flannel shirt, and great big heavy boots. And he looked down and said, "Susan, you called from him. You wanted me to help you with something?" She didn't know what to do. But then Kathy heard the man's voice and came running to the door and immediately recognized Santa. She explained to Santa what was going on over at Kennesaw. And so Santa got Susan and Sharon and Kathy on his sleigh, and they took off. They had one of the, whenever you fly with a reindeer, you have to have an elf there to help. They took off to Kennesaw Mountain. When they got there, they rescued the sprites. They talked the sprites into coming with them. And they had brought that basket, the very same basket they used for the Twinkle Toes fairies. They got all the Kenneman sprites into that basket, and they took them to the North Pole. Everything went well for about a year. And then the Kenneman started to get sick. Santa, not knowing what to do, he exhausted his ideas. He called Kathy back, and even went down and got Kathy, Susan, and Sharon, and took them back to the North Pole to help find out what was wrong with the Kenneman sprites. It turns out, you remember what the Kennemans did at Kennesaw around the park? What did they do?
Took care of the children.
They took care of the children. Problem is, up at the North Pole, there's not a lot of children getting in trouble. They have fun, but they're not really getting in trouble. So the Kennemans had lost their purpose. And they got sick. Well, when they realized what was going on, they came up with an idea. They were going to, since the Kennemans liked hiding dolls, they came up with the idea of making dolls and letting the sprites hide in the dolls, and they could send them all over the world to friends and family and friends of friends. And they talked to Augustus, the director, the head of the Kenneman colony, and said, "Yes, we can do that. Except there's 3 things you have to understand. We cannot hide in any doll that has not been given a loving name. We can only stay at any home for about a month at a time. And you can't touch the doll when we're in it because we're very jittery about being played with. That's how our home is destroyed. So you can't touch the doll when we're inside." Okay. Well, Santa immediately volunteered to start making dolls. And Susan and Sharon said, "No, we can do that. Mama taught us how to do that." And so they went to work making these cute little dolls. And inside of each doll, they put just a little grain of dirt from the Kennesaw Mountain. That made it possible so no matter where the doll went, the Kenneman sprite could find it and could even move it around. Well, before they left, Santa asked, "Augustus, can you watch out for the children for me and tell me those that are being really, really good and maybe what they want for Christmas?" He says, "We can do better than that. Because we have home here and a home within the doll, we can travel back and forth in an instant." Well, the dolls that the girls made look an awful lot like little Christmas elves. And you can find them all over the place as Christmas comes near. You can find them in drugstores, toy stores, department stores. And you know what they're called? What is it? Elf on the Shelf. But there are 3 rules that you've got to adhere to. First, give them a very loving name, possibly even a fun name. Kenneman sprites do like to have fun. While they're there, while the Kenneman sprite is inside, you don't touch that doll, or the sprite will leave and he won't come back. And always remember that This is something that's not in the rules, but it's something that holds true. Come Christmas morning, when Santa comes around, he picks up the doll and takes it back to the Kennebec colony at the North Pole, where the sprites can take care of it.